In this presentation, we would like to look at the statements of a few selected scholars on the very critical importance of concern for human interests, concern for public benefit, or the Maqasid of Sharia. We'll start by looking at a statement by one of the greatest students in the Hanbali school, a great scholar and a student of Ibn Taymiyyah by the name Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. In his book, I'lam al-Mawaqi'in, he says that the foundation of Sharia is the wisdom and the safeguarding of people's welfare in this life and in the next. In its entirety, it is about justice, mercy, wisdom, and good. Every rule which replaces justice with injustice, mercy with its opposite, and the common good with mischief, and wisdom with folly, is a ruling that does not belong to the Sharia, even though it might have been claimed to be so, according to some interpretation. Ibn Qayyim is emphasizing four major maqasid here: justice, mercy, wisdom, and good. He says it's in its entirety, it's about justice, mercy, wisdom, and good. And every rule that goes contrary to these does not belong to the Sharia, even though someone might have claimed it is, according to some interpretation. And so where interpretations of the Quran and the Sunnah go against those clear objectives of justice, mercy, wisdom, and good, such interpretations do not belong to the Sharia because they contradict the objectives of Sharia itself. Another respected scholar from the Shafi'i madhab, Al-Izz bin Abdus Salam, who was nicknamed Al-Sultan al-Ulama, the Sultan of the scholars. He says in his book Qawaid al-Ahkam fi Masalih al-An'am, he says, when you study how the purpose of law brings good and prevents mischief, you realize that it is unlawful to overlook any common good. It is unlawful to support any act of mischief in any situation, even if you have no specific evidence from the script, from consensus, or from analogy. Al-Izz bin Abdus Salam is making it clear that from all the studies you would have of the purpose of law, it is to bring benefit and to avoid or prevent mischief. And any action that goes contrary to this is unacceptable in Islam, even if you have no textual evidence to back you, that there is sufficient textual evidence to back these objectives. In fact, he is also quoted as having written that every action that misses its purpose of bringing benefit or removing harm is void. That for an action in Sharia to be considered valid, it must achieve the objectives of Sharia. Another scholar, a great Maliki scholar, Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi from Granada, Spain, is reported to have said in his book Al-Mawafaqat, he says, since it is established that the rules of Sharia aim to serve human benefits and interests, it follows that human actions should be based on that. When an act is legitimate in both its essence and appearance, no difficulty arises. However, if an act is consistent with the law in appearance, yet contrary to human interests, it is invalid. And anyone who acts contrary to human interests and welfare is engaged in an illegitimate exercise. This is interesting, because what Imam Shatibi is saying is, even if an act is consistent with the law, so you can bring evidence to say this is the law. However, he is saying that if an act is consistent with the law in appearance, however, it goes contrary to human welfare, then it is an invalid law from the Sharia point of view. Because he says anyone who acts contrary to human welfare or maslahah is engaged in an illegitimate exercise. Again, what we find from these scholars, as we find from many scholars in this whole field of Maqasid, is that interpretations of the Quran, Sunnah, the use of ijtihad and the tools of qiyas and istihsan and ijma and ra'i of Sahaba, any interpretation that goes contrary to those clear benefits that Sharia is out to achieve or the harm that Sharia is out to prevent, any interpretation that goes contrary to those is one that is illegitimate, it is invalid because it goes contrary to the clear text of the Quran and the Sunnah, or the clear objectives based on textual evidence of the Quran and in the Sunnah. And so, as Izzuddin Abdul Salam says, for a position to be legitimate, it must achieve its objectives. And if it goes contrary to the objectives, it is void or null and void.